I love it.
Okay, teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the #1 show on innovative teamwork. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. To my regular listeners, you already know what goes down when you hit the play button here. We are here to serve you in some way, shape, form, or fashion. Whatever you may be struggling with, whatever is challenging you at this specific moment, this show is here to show or to tell you indirectly, to tell you that you're not going through it alone. There's a lot of people that have a lot of situations and they've built their business based on helping folks who really have that challenge, really have that goal, that business ownership goal to get somewhere, yet they don't know if they have the right team. Today, Mr. Brad Martineau, founder of the 6thDivision, is going to talk to us all about. I mean, I was listening to you earlier, Brad, and you have a very interesting way of building funnels. And somebody like me, I have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things going on, and the importance of building software and making it so your system is working harder than you actually are is something I can't wait to really pick your brain about and get your thoughts on that. But before all of that, we got to talk about the fact that you're a basketball fan, because I am from the DMV. I'm a sports guy and all that. So, walk us through a little bit about your background, where you're from, and then we'll kind of go from there, man.
Sweet. Yeah. So born and raised in Arizona. So Arizona native out here. And for some reason can't just escape the heat. I love it. I don't know what that is. Grew up in a big family. So, yeah. And we're just starting to get, as of the time of this recording, we're just starting to get where I can wake up in the morning. I get up at like 5 and I'll just go hang out and sit outside. And even at 5, we're just starting to get where it's not like, oh man, I should I don't know, go jump in a pool or something. It's actually kind of decent weather in the morning and at night. So, whatever. Right. So anyway, grew up in a big family. I'm the 6th of 10 kids. It was in 3rd grade, I think it was, when I first got introduced to basketball. I was at a friend's house, and the friend's older sister was talking trash with a friend about the Suns versus the Lakers. And I still vividly remember seeing the headline that said Suns versus Lakers. And I don't know how, but I had no idea what that was. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't even know what basketball was. And I got introduced to it. My family wasn't like a sports family, so I don't have any like collegiate allegiances or anything like that. But I got into basketball and I loved it, and it's been the thing that I've spent probably the most time like across my entire life is just playing basketball. So grew up playing in high school, and then I was like, after high school, I went on a mission for my church, came home, and I was like, I'm gonna go see if I can play like at a local community college. That didn't work out. And then I got married really quickly, and then we had kids really quickly. And I was like, okay, well, we should probably be responsible. So I just ended up playing. I ended up playing a ton of pickup ball. And then later on, I have since found these little circuits where you have to be like 30 or 35 or older. But they do these different camps at different universities, and they get 40 or 50 guys together, break them up into teams. The players at the universities become the coaches, the coaching staff's there. So those are like they're like my only guilty pleasure, where I'll spend money on stuff that I like to do that has no logical justification other than I like to do it. But they're super fun. And for me, basketball, I joke about it a lot, but it's actually real. Like, basketball for me is a metaphor for life, and there's so many lessons that I've learned. And my guess is probably the same for you with football. It's like, oh, it all makes sense through the lens of basketball. So I love it. And it's helped. And now I got my youngest son. So I've got 5 kids. My youngest son just started his freshman year in high school, and the kid can hoop. So it'll be really fun to see where he goes and what he ends up doing with it. But
that's what, like, because I'm looking at that. I partnered with 10 other authors on this book titled The 6-Figure Athlete, and in it it's him. He's played basketball overseas. Kezia, she's, I believe, the head basketball coach at App State at one point. Then there was Kendra, another basketball. There was several basketball people, and I always say, I might be a little biased when I say this because I grew up in the DMV, but basketball is probably the best sport when you're related to business, when you're related to 18-7. They actually started it. I actually wrote an article about, it was called How to Make a Win-Win Deal with Jordans. And I said, there's no debate when it comes who's the best when it comes to marketing, who's the GOAT when it comes to marketing. Jordan is making money and he's been retired for 20 years. So I look at that sport just like you guys, or just like you do, even though I never played, but seeing the business aspect of it has kind of helped me when it comes to being ahead of the curve. And I'm curious now, as you've grown in your business and you look back on, even though you didn't make it to the NBA, because again, 99% of you guys listening to me, you're not making it to the NBA. So I'm just gonna put that out there. Now, even though you didn't make it, you still saw a ton of value in it. And if you can lean into just a little bit about how the lessons that you may have picked up, being dedicated to that sport, how that was able to help you build your business.
Yeah. So I think they're like immediately my mind goes to sort of two buckets. And the first one is how it related, like to me personally, and then what I learned and the lessons I've taken as you consider like the team that you have to play with. And then the last 4 years I've been coaching high school basketball, and then 4 years before that was AAU. But then there's the layer of like, oh, I'm the coach, and then I've got a team. So like I'm the player. It's like me as a player, me as a person. Then there's me as a player with teammates, and then there's the coach trying to organize the teammates. So
there's so many, and I'm glad you broke it down, like, because there's so many layers to it. Like that's something I never understood as a kid playing sports, is like we don't realize we're at literally the beginning stages of something that people do for the rest of their life. There's so many ownership, coaches, youth, parents, getting them to practice. I mean, it's incredible. It's insane.
Yeah, and I know that there are other layers that I haven't even gotten to. Like when I go to these camps, I intentionally, because I coach and because my son plays and because I still play and I like to get better, I'll sit down. Like I remember I sat down with it was Bill Self was at the Kansas University camp, and I was like, all right, so tell me tell me what you're like. I was like, give me a little glimpse into how you look at stuff.
Yeah.
And he sat down and he's just like, all right, well, our goal is as fast as possible. We want to get the ball up. We want to rotate it to the third side, get it back over to here. And I was like, okay, hold on a second. You got to break some of this terminology down. And it was just, like when you sit down and talk with someone that is like a master of their craft, and you're like, all right, I understand what you're saying, but I'm also aware enough to recognize that there is so much experience packed into everything you just said. I need you to, we're going to run this back a little bit. So like, I'm clear that there are more layers that, maybe we'll see if we ever get to that. But so back to your question. I would say for me personally, at the individual level, so forget the teammates, just at the individual level with basketball. And this is really manifest too, as I'm raising my youngest son and he's playing basketball. So one big element is finding something that you actually love to do. And that's an important piece. I think sometimes when people grow up, and I've had phases of my life where I've sort of slipped into this, we convince ourselves that we just have to do stuff. And we end up doing stuff that we hate. And so the first thing was just the over time recognizing like, no, I really love this. And I would take it to like, I feel like the love for this was put in me when I was created. And I ought to have enough courage to like pursue that. And so on the business side, where that translated to the business side is when we started 6thDivision, our primary focus was to help people use automation to make their business run better. And at that point, we wanted to make automation simple and easy. That's still one of the primary things that we do. We got other stuff we do now, but that was one of the primary things. And I had just spent probably 8 years working at one of the main automation CRM companies. And we started this, I got laid off. There's the whole backstory there, but I got laid off. I had 5 kids. My youngest one, the son I was talking about, was 6 weeks old. So I went to go look at jobs because I was slipping into that, oh, well, I just got to go do something to make money. And realized really quickly there were no jobs that even sounded interesting or could make the amount of money I needed to provide for my family. So I'm like, I guess I'm going to go create this agency consulting business to help people with automation. And initially I didn't like it at all. I tried to run away from it. And then I started to bring in some other people. We started to build this thing, and we built this 7-figure company in our first year, and then we grew it every year after that. But for the first 2 to 3 years of running this successful company, I didn't like it, and I was looking for reasons to leave it. Until one day, I woke up and I realized I've been given a gift of this skill set, and I actually love everything about the skill set. If I would just stop and allow myself to recognize I actually really love doing this, and I love the people that I work with. And the thing that made that possible for me, I don't know, are you familiar with Joe Polish?
No.
Joe Polish runs a podcast called I Love Marketing, kind of like a thought leader dude, really good guy. He has this acronym that he uses when you're going to create a business, and he's like, I only do ELF businesses, ELF, ELF businesses. They have to be easy, lucrative, and fun. Easy meaning it's something that I can just naturally do really well. Lucrative meaning I can make the amount of money that I need to make based on the time that I'm involving. And then fun, like I have fun doing it. And I spent all this time trying to like get out of my own business. And then I woke up one day and I realized, wait a minute, I'm really good at this. We can make money at this. And I love what I do. I love my clients. I love the people that I work with. And I actually have fun when I'm doing it. The only time I don't have fun is when I'm telling myself that I don't actually love it. So I think the very first thing, and that was like a correlation of, I realized early on, like, I love basketball. I played football for 1 year, my freshman year in high school. And then I was like, no, I love basketball. So I'm gonna go play basketball. So that process of really recognizing, like, there's a thing that I love, translated definitely into business. So that would be one big element. And then another big element for me was learning how to actually chase after something that you love, and actually how to work hard and how to grind. I don't know how many hours I spent shooting. I don't know how many hours I spent on ball handling. I don't know how many hours I spent on all of those things. But it's what created, like, I can shoot really well and I can handle the ball. It's been a while since I've trained ball handling, so I'm not as good now, but I could handle the ball really well. And that like, it just built a default habit in me of, if there's a thing that I want, it's going to take work. And I remember there's a quote when I was growing up. It said, this is like the basketball one that I put on my wall, that was somewhere, it was something like, every minute you're not practicing, there's somebody else who is. And when you meet that person, they'll beat you. So like, that was the backdrop of my mind, is like, hey, if I want this outcome and I want to be the best, like, I've got to put in, I got to put in the work. And that is exactly what led to the success that I've had in business. So it's like two major principles that came out of basketball that translated to just me personally would be, one, identifying what I love and actually letting myself know, no, I actually love this. This is actually really fun. And then two, putting in the work and like grinding on the work. And I'd have teammates that would complain about the amount of time we would spend on little things that they're like, this doesn't matter. I'm like, but it does, because everybody has to decide this every time. So we should just figure it out. Even if it takes us a week to figure out the dumbest question, then we'll have the answer and we'll save everybody else hours of their life. So those would be two things initially.
Yeah, it's absolutely, because you're making me think of back then the Coach K days, and it got said that he'd open up that basketball court 24 hours a day, 365. Like, there was never any time in which the players could not go in whatever time of day it was and just get their shots right, just put up some shots or just do something to get themselves better. And one of the things that you mentioned, can you just dive deeper into this? Because what you mentioned in terms of automation, I think, is important. And I was just listening to you, and you kind of have a framework that starts with, it kind of reminds me of Simon Sinek, would start with why, but it starts, I'm reading it now, it says, you, vision, team, clients. And when you're talking about automation, you're talking about putting things in a funnel and making it so a system is essentially pretty much working harder than you are, just like similar to whether it's zone defense or going to man or whatever, pick and roll, however it works. Speak a little bit about, when it comes to automation, how your business is unique in that, and like the time frame that you're talking about. Was this a time where there was the internet or like YouTube? Like, what was going on to where you started to realize automation is going to be actually a need for people as they're trying to build their businesses?
Yeah, 100%. So an interesting note before I get into those topics that you just laid out is, this also is there's also the basketball parallel. When I'm coaching my son, and when I was coaching basketball, what I would talk a lot about, and what I still try to get him to really understand, is what you're trying to do is you're trying to install habits. And a habit is something you don't have to think about. It just happens. But you have to think about it a lot and rep it a lot to get it to the point where it's a habit. But once it's a habit, it basically is automatic. It's like the equivalent of business automation on the court.
Wow.
So like, things just,
you just taught me, you taught my teacher, so you taught me something. Automation, how that's
they just like, it just happens. And there's like movement habits. And right now what I'm working on with my son is like, we got to get you to shift to move, like, just for speed and agility. He's more on his heels. You'll appreciate this. He runs a little bit more on his heels. I'm like, no, you got to shift that to the front half of your foot if you want to be quicker and faster. But we got to train it now, think about it, and spend the reps so that it becomes a habit, so that the thinking that you're doing is the thinking that's valuable. There's no value created. My guess, in fact, I'll just ask you, in a football game for a football player, is there any value created if the player on the field is thinking about how they're running?
None.
No.
Gotta go. My college coach say no wasted movement. We watched wasted movement.
So you can't be thinking about it, but you also can't ignore it and then be inefficient when you run. So you have to do the work to establish the habit so that two things happen. One, no wasted movement, so that you're not wasting energy, you're not slow, you've optimized your movement. But the other thing that happens is that it creates for you that your brain can do what's valuable for you on the field, which is process what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to take all of the things where there's no value in the middle of like in the middle of a game time, there's no value in you thinking about a lot of things, but there is value in them getting done.
Oh man. Yeah.
There's just no value in you actually processing it consciously.
Yeah.
Then what you can do is you can then do what's valuable for you in the game, which is actually process what's happening and make better reads. And most players, the reason why they can't continue to grow and scale is like they can't continue to get to the next level is they haven't created the habits that just let those things happen so that they can actually process at the next level. The game moves too fast at the next level, and they're too caught up thinking about a whole bunch of things that they should have already made a habit. Okay, so that's the athletic sports side, right? The basketball side.
And yeah, when we go right into what you're going to talk about, though, the automation.
Yeah, when we go to the business side, it's the exact same thing, which is looking at your business and recognizing how do I take aspects of my business and identify, like everything that needs to happen in my business is either going to be something where there's value in a human processing it real time, or it should just be like a business habit. So what we want to look at is we want to look at where are we wasting time? Like your coach said, no wasted movement. Well, where are we wasting time? There should be no wasted movement or no wasted time or energy spent in a business. But the only way we do that is with habits. But those habits in a business become systems. And then sometimes, and in some cases, they become automation. And the key, I just want to make sure we call this out, and then I'm actually going to draw a couple of things here. But the key is that the whole goal of moving stuff to systems and then sometimes automation is so that the humans in the business can do the things that will be valuable for the human in the business. Like be a human with your client rather than being robotic because you're overwhelmed by all these extra things that you have to do. Or be a leader of your team and actually be like a real leader rather than being like a fraction of the leader that your team needs because you're so overwhelmed by all these things because you're thinking about how you're running right in the business. So the idea is to create space for the human to be human and to be powerful.
Right.
Okay, so I'll break a couple of things down. I just need to go grab a worksheet. Give me literally 2 seconds. Good. I'm glad I had these available. So we're going to do this, and let's just talk through some of these. I didn't think I was going to do this. So let me just turn off autofocus real quick. All right. So what you described, vision, all of that, I'm just going to do like a quick sort of chicken scratch of what that looks like. For me, what I call this is like the smooth scaling framework and system of how you would grow and scale a business, but have it be smooth. And there are some different layers. And then we'll talk about where the typical automation that we do fits into it. But I think this will be valuable for any entrepreneur to start to organize. If I come back here for dramatic effect. The key to creating systems. The key to creating systems and automation is first that you have an organized lens about how you think about the business. If you get overwhelmed when all the different things come at you, then you're going to be overwhelmed all the time. It doesn't really matter. And it's impossible to create effective systems and or automation. So the first thing we want to do is identify, I call them the Lego bags. Like, I don't know, you ever bought a Lego set?
I haven't bought one, but I teach at a school. So
okay. So if you buy a Lego set, say it's got 1,000 pieces and you open up the box and drop it out, what comes out are Lego bags, not Lego pieces. Like, could you imagine?
No, I've seen that. Yeah, because especially the little ones, they'll come out, put them in bags. It's not going to be the big, but those little tiny ones, they'll put them in separate bags.
Yeah. So if you imagine a 7-year-old buying 1,000-piece Lego set, or even a 12-year-old, and then 1,000 pieces drop on the ground, it's like, what the frick? They'll be like, "Hey, Dad, come put this together." I'm like, "I'm never buying one of these things again." Right. So the challenge though, like there's we call it the Lego principle when I talk about it, when I teach it. Because it's such a powerful principle. You got to master modular thinking where you can take this big complex thing, break it down into individual Lego bags. The challenge is that when entrepreneurs get overwhelmed, my experience is that what they're doing is they just stepped into a pile of 1,000 Lego pieces and they're trying to manage them all. And their life would be dramatically simplified if they were like, wait, hold on. What are the bags? Let me actually organize the bags. And then I'm going to go focus on one bag at a time, which is a lot easier than trying to make sense of 1,000 different Lego pieces. So what you mentioned, what I'll roll through here are basically the Lego bags that I use to analyze businesses that I found to be the most successful. So I'll just do this. We'll roll through this just real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so at the very top, I think it's important to anchor what we're trying to accomplish here in the business. The business exists for you to go get in front of people's eyeballs, get some people to raise their hand and say, "Yo, I'm interested." get some people to then buy some money or to buy some stuff from you and then get people to be happy, right? Like that's what we're trying to do,
Exactly.
the client journey, but the whole business exists to make that happen. And then when we go to break this down, when we look at these Lego bags, what I do is we'll go from the top down. This very top piece is the client journey, meaning everything that you do in order to get in front of somebody, all the emails that you send, the landing pages you have, all of the things that you have in here, what you do after somebody buys, all of those steps, they go into a bag called the client journey. That's a bag all by itself. The automation that you use, the technology that you use, all that stuff, that's all a part of this bag. And then I got some specific terms that I call, like I refer to the client journey as what we're actually trying to create is a happy client factory. I want a thing that gets me the clients that I want, makes those clients happy, and then runs like a factory. So it's not just a client journey, it's not just funnels, it's not just automation, it's all of those combined so that I have a happy client factory. So that's one bag. And when we start,
I just got to pause you there because
go for it.
This is too important for us to just brush over. Even though we're talking technology and utilizing the technology we have in front of us, it's still about the client. All right. I talk about there's a difference between a customer and a client. It's still about the actual individual person. So you don't get to duck and hide behind your computer screen, behind your phone. You have to go out, meet people, have that relationship, ask them what they want. They will tell you. If you genuinely care about the client, they're going to tell you, and then you're going to make that journey something that's going to be favorable for them. Not necessarily, I mean, you're going to, if you love what you do, obviously you're going to love it, but the priority should be the client's needs and wants.
Yes, I love that you distinguish between clients and customers too.
Yeah.
Because customers buy things, clients are people that you want to have a relationship
You
with.
buy stuff that you never hear from them again.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, I don't want customers, I want clients. So
Right.
I love that. And so in here, you're spot on. And here we have like, hey, here's the tech and the automation that we would use. We also have like the strategies that we're going to implement to capture leads and get them to convert. And then I also think that the experience that you deliver is really important. So like, these are all of the things that go into a happy client factory. And where a lot of people struggle is they refer to it as a journey. They refer to them as customers. They refer to it as funnels. They refer to it as automation, and they set that as their target. And when they set that as their target, they miss the actual objective, which is get clients, make them happy, and make that thing run like a machine.
Yes. He said nothing about money there, folks. Nothing. He said, get the people, make them happy. That's it. All right.
It's not, yeah, it's get, well, so it's get the people, make them happy, like make them love you, and then figure out the most efficient way to do that so that you can actually help more people. There's only, all right, this is the dramatic effect. There's only two ways that you can scale in your business. You either create more value for the people you currently serve, or you figure out a way to create value for more people.
Yeah.
So you're either going to create a system, your efficiency, your factory makes it so that you can create more value and then therefore make more money for the people that you serve. So it's not about getting more clients, it's about helping the clients more. Or you're going to create a factory that allows you to serve more people.
Yeah.
But that is your job. Like, you have been given, my opinion, not to like preach at anybody, but you've been given a gift of being able to do what you do and a passion for what you do. You have a responsibility to then figure out the way to share that with the most people, or share it the most with the people that you share. I heard a quote recently that I love. I'm not trying to make any sort of religious or spiritual anything, but I love this quote. It said, your potential is God's gift to you, and what you do with it is your gift back to him. Yeah. So make God mean whatever it means for you, but your potential and your passion and your skills are a gift that's been given to you. And the extent to which you make this thing be a machine that you can use it to impact other people in a greater fashion is your gift back to the source of your skills and your gift and your passion. I love that approach.
1000%, 1000%, yes.
Okay. All right, we'll go through the rest of these real quick. So client journey is a bag. Now, I also want to just add real quick, the reason why I have these laid out like this is I think of this like I'm building a brick wall. So when we're done, what you'll see is this layer down here is the foundation on which everything sits. And if this is a weak layer, the whole thing will crumble. Yeah. And then this next layer is the next layer up. And if any of these crumble under here, the whole thing falls apart. So we're starting at the top, but when we're done, we're going to look at it like we're building a wall. So client journey is one. The next one you have is the team. I don't know. I feel like maybe you do something. You probably talk about this once in a while with people, right?
Yes.
Teamwork, teammates.
This is my life.
Yeah. Yep. So in here, the things that I like to talk about, like that go into this Lego bag, or any conversations you have around like the culture you're trying to define. Right. It's your hiring process. and whether you've made that thing be a machine so you can be a powerful hirer, or whether you're like still nervous and scared every time and you Google search the dumb questions that they tell you should ask, even though you don't know what you're going to do with the answer. And then this is like leadership and management that lives in here from a standpoint of like, what are the operational things in your business? But this is all about the people in your business. Now, what I call this, because team, I think there's a better term for it than just team. What we say we're trying to install is an A player factory. Everybody talks about wanting A players. I don't think you buy them at a flea market. I think you create them. And your job is to build a business that creates and then maintains A players.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we could talk about in here around that, but this just has to do with the people that you let in. Have you defined the culture so that people know if they even should be working for you? Do you have a process that vets people the right way so that by the time you go to hire them, you already know for sure that they're the right fit? And then leadership is, and then do you have a system to maintain that they're A players and to continue to increase and grow? Like factories are constantly innovating to make the things that the factory produces better. So A player factory would be like the next Lego bag.
Yes.
All right. I think if I turn the mic back over to you, you might be able to monologue for a long time about that one. That's
I mean, as you're talking too, because you said A player, I'm a Michigan football fan, and you know, I had to go through the tough defeat, but it was nice to see Coach Harbaugh win his first game with the Chargers. And I'm going back to his first draft pick, and he picked I think it was Joe Vitt, or it was the offensive lineman from Notre Dame. And he knew the question was going to come up. Hey, how come you didn't get a quote unquote playmaker like a wideout or running back? He goes, look, we consider offensive linemen playmakers too. That was his response to the report. And when you're talking about A players, it's actually about putting someone in a specific position that they're going to be great at. All right. That doesn't mean that if someone's not great closer or great salesman, hey, that's fine. Put them in a situation where they may do great administrative work. Make sure each person's skill set is there so they all can be A players. So that's a great concept there.
This is which is exactly why we call it the factory, because it's actually more about what you create to have people be A players, not just in how you organize your team, but also in the culture, but also in your hiring process. You create, I don't know how many people I've had come through the process where we have created that they're more aware and they wake up throughout the hiring process. So there's just a really interesting thing. A lot of times, you know, if we're not careful as entrepreneurs, we can start to complain or whine about the fact that we don't have A players or they're too hard to find. It's like, that's not how the game works. You create the system that creates the A players. And what you just described, which I love, is put people in the position where they can be an A player and then create that position and support them so that they continue to grow as an A player. So I love that. Okay. A couple other backs here. Underneath this one, the other one we have, this is like your operational cadence or your rhythm. So this just has to do with people. It doesn't have to do with how people get work done. So your operational cadence, your ops, this is your, it's like your meetings. How do you do meetings? How do you communicate? Are you in Slack? Do you do emails? How do you have, like, I call them business as usual tasks. How do you have those organized? Do you have a process where it's organized, that you know all the work that has to be done in the company, it's organized, you know how it's going to be done? How do you keep track of projects that you're working on? It's like, independent of the people in your business, how do you get work done? And a lot of times these two, they get consolidated, and people try to consolidate them into the same Lego bag, and they're totally different. They're completely different things. We'll talk about that in a second. But this one I call, it's not just ops. We call this, you want to install a clockwork cadence. So your business just runs like clockwork. You got a cadence, it just runs like clockwork. And this, again, I just want to like reiterate, ops is totally different than team. Your ops can be a critical component of making your team be A players. So if you have A players and you have a crappy cadence and no organization, how your business runs and gets stuff done, you will not have A players very long.
I gotta make sure I ask you a question on this one, because when you're talking about meetings, there's a lot of, I come from it's fitness, even so, actually when I coached high school football too, there were a lot of meetings, even actually now I'm thinking about it, college, there's a lot of college coaches who waste a lot of time on X's and O's, and you have meetings over this game strategy. There's a lot of wasted time when it comes to the meetings. How do you advise clients to make sure that meetings are running as efficiently as possible so that they can actually get to the revenue generating things, the things that are going to actually make their business better?
That's a phenomenal question. So the very first thing for me is every meeting you have to be able to answer before it actually even gets scheduled. You have to be able to answer, what are we trying to have happen here? Like, what's the outcome of this meeting? What is, and then as we continue to go down, let's do this. This will make a little bit more sense. Can we put a pin in that question until I get to these next two Lego bags? And I want to come back and I'll show you. Okay. All right. So we have how we get work done. And what I wanted to just be clear on is, you can have great people, a crappy way of doing work. These people will leave, or they will start to become slackers, and you will have created it.
Right.
You can also have by external standards, people that other ones would be like, oh, well, they're not A players. A player does not mean that they're this phenomenal person that is worth a ton of money or whatever. It means that they can produce the outcomes well in the role that you put them in.
Yeah.
So you could have people that maybe aren't like superstars by everybody else's standards, but you plug them into a clockwork cadence and they become superstars.
Exactly.
So this 100% influences that. All right. Now, the next one down, which acts as support for this, is your vision. So this is the stuff like, why do you exist? Like, what's the purpose of your business? This is what's the plan and the model? Like, what do you sell and how do you know when you make money and if your business actually works? And then a vision of like, what does the immediate future look like? And again, I've got a term for this because vision doesn't quite capture it all. For me on vision, where most people screw up is one of two things. The vision is either all vision and no tactics. So it's all warm, fuzzy feelings, but there's no like meat behind it. Or it's all meat and tactics and there's nothing to get excited about. So like you got to balance those things. So we call this a tactical vision, to capture both aspects of that, which means it's a vision that it's actually viable and it's actually legitimate. We know where we're going. Both the purpose captures like the big picture of what we're doing. The plan and the model talks about, well, here's what we're selling, here's how many people we're going to hire, and here's how we know how we make money. And then the future is, and then here's the like marching orders for the next 90 to 120 days or whatever. Yeah. So the tactical vision, and then I'll jump to the last one, and then we can talk sort of about all of them. The last one, and you mentioned this already, but the last one is you. Like this whole thing sits on top of you. Yeah. It sits on top of, what do you want to get out of this? I have a video on my YouTube channel. We talk about the return document, which I think every entrepreneur should fill out before they even start a business. And if they haven't, they should go fill it out to make sure that they build the business they want. So what do you want out of it? Do you personally believe that you can actually lead this business where it's going to go? And then what is your personal development as a leader? Because I have proven this through painful experience. It is impossible to build a business beyond your capacity to lead it. Like a business cannot scale beyond your capacity to lead it. I've tried it. I've tried to shirk from the personal growth, and it only falls apart every single time. So I'm just here to save you the pain and suffering from that. And so for me, the label here on this one is, what we're really trying to do is we're just trying to unlock this thing I call inside strength. It's already there. We already have everything that we need to be the leader that we need in order to take our business where we want it to go. It's about unlocking it. It's about removing the things that are in our way rather than developing something necessarily. So this is all about, I've got to get my inside strength unlocked so that I can go lead this. So those are, when I look at a business, any business that I would ever look at, if I were to come in and consult and be like, hey, help us with this, what I'd be looking at is, cool, we're going to go analyze all of these, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm going to start to pay attention. We're going to analyze all of these to figure out where the weak link is. There was an analogy by, I'm sure you're familiar with Alex Hormozy. He's kind of all over the place these days. He gave an analogy where he talked about, it's like every business has a, what was the term that he used? Every business has not a chokehold, a constraint. And they have like one constraint that is the major primary constraint they should work on. And then the analogy he gave that I loved was deadlifting. He's like, so think about it this way. If you're deadlifting, and for those that don't know what deadlifting is, I'm assuming most of the people probably do. There's a bar on the ground. I bend over with proper form, and I pick it up. Yeah, like I pick it up. We're not even going into clean and jerk, just like a deadlift, right? So there are different muscles that contribute to that. Like my back's involved, my arms and my grip strength are involved, and my legs are involved. And he's like, look, if your legs and your back can deadlift, have the capacity to deadlift 750 pounds or 500 pounds, it doesn't even matter what it is, but your grip strength can only hold 250, your grip strength is your constraint. So you don't need to worry about doing legs and back stuff to boost your deadlift. You need to figure out your grip strength. Now, if your grip strength could hold 500 pounds, but your legs and your back or whatever can only do 250, then you got to work on your legs and you got to work on your back. So that same analogy applied here is, I look at these, and these are the 5 major components that make up any business ever.
Yes.
And then what I'm going to go through is I'm going to go through and say, okay, well, if you're not growing or if things aren't running the way that you want, all we got to do is figure out what the constraint is, figure out the biggest constraint, knock that down, then we go to the next one.
Right.
So when we come in, it's like, well, are you hiding and running away from your business because you're not trying to grow, or you're not willing to grow and be a leader because you're afraid? Then we should start with that, because nothing else that we do will matter if that continues. If you're not crystal clear on what you want this business to return back to you, then we can't make decisions up here about the businesses, how the business is going to run. So that's the place I start. Make sure that's locked in and loaded. Then we go to vision. A lot of people be like, oh, a lot of people think that it's always up here. I don't get enough leads, or I'm not converting enough, or not whatever. A lot of times when I talk to people, it's like, well, let's go look at your vision. Let's look at the plan that you put together about what you're going to sell. It's like, well, this is not even realistic. You're like, if you actually chart the job descriptions for the people that you're going to hire, you're asking them to do 3 full-time jobs for the pay of like a part-time person.
Right.
This is not going to last. Your vision is off. So we could go do a bunch of stuff up here, but you're constantly going to be swimming in chaos because you're sitting on top of a foundation that's not strong enough.
Right.
Then we go up to like, hey, we're not delivering the way that we want, or whatever, or my team, whatever. It's like, well, you're operational, like you are leaking energy. Like we're talking about wasted movement. Like you're wasting so much time in your operations. That's why stuff doesn't move. And so we go bottom up and just say, well, check, we got to make sure that's in place, make sure that's in place. And then ultimately, if all of these are organized, what it should end up leaving you to do as your team is figure out and spend all your creative energy on, how do I build a better happy client factory?
Right. The thing about it, and first of all, it's actually a very fascinating model because it's very easy to understand. One of my favorite books is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yep.
And he talks a lot about just the success. He doesn't dismiss hard work, but he talks a lot about how your luck and the certain unique circumstances put you in a position to where you can be successful, right? And the one thing I want to make sure we make clear to the listeners is, as simple as you've made it, it's not an easy process. You just mentioned you have 5 kids and you had to figure out how you were going to make this work. And there was actually a situation too where I was listening to you before we were recording, where I guess you wrote a letter to yourself where you asked yourself how committed you are, how, can you be a great husband? Can you be a great father and all that? And you were able to build the business from that. So can you speak on a little bit about how you're able to balance the two, and how you're able to, because there's a lot of guys out there that may get tripped up in, running a business because, okay, I got to put food on the table for my family. So I just got to take this job. I got to eat it. I'm getting the salary. I'm not going to take that risk. So, speak on that balance a little bit.
Yeah. So balance is an interesting thing. It's just an interesting concept when you talk about it, because if you don't go deeper than surface level, balance feels like I wake up and at like 9 o'clock I clock in and I do whatever work and I can create amazing results. And at 5 o'clock I just get to check out and never think about it again. And then I just go home and there's like birds chirping in the background and like
that's the shit we're like sold in the movies, in college.
Yeah.
That's what we're sold. Like I can understand why people are kind of kids are drawn to that lifestyle, but it's just not the reality. It's not real life. That's, fairy tales.
Yeah, and the interesting thing, so I've been doing a little bit of studying. I've just been paying attention and talking to older generations a little bit. And I have this theory, if you look at like generations, like as a generation over time,
right? Like
our generation, we live better than anybody's ever lived. Even if we're not making very good money, like you're still in a house, by the way, like with AC and water. And I don't mean to diminish at all people that are living, in poverty or whatever, but generally speaking, we have grown up, I think, with an expectation that like I deserve this level of comfort. If I go back and I look at my dad's generation, and I've had conversations with him, I go back and look at my dad's generation, which, by the way, I think a lot of that is what leads to a lot of anxiety. I think there's a quote I love. It says, anxiety lives in the space between alternatives, which is when we haven't decided. And I think there's an element where anxiety comes into play because we have this vision of this ease of life that ought to just happen. And then we start to get a sense that it's actually going to take some work, but we don't want to do the work because we have an expectation that it was just going to be given to us, that we just sort of adopted.
Like the habits, yeah. It goes back to the habits.
It just kind of happened. It's not like anybody was maliciously trying to teach it or whatever. It's just the thing that happened. And there's a breakthrough point. Like I've had to do a lot of work with my kids on this to be like, listen, That is not the case. We do make things comfortable because we want to have a nice place to live. And it's because we're going to work our butt off. All right. Like there's a ton of work that goes into making that happen.
Yeah.
So there's that generation. Then we go back to like our parents' generation who were raised by people that went through the Great Depression. And loosely put, this is not so nobody can, like, there's nothing to fact check here. This is loosely put, observational through some conversation, sort of anecdotal.
Yeah.
But that generation was raised through the lens of parents where like this idea of just comfort, I expect to get it. That was not there.
Wasn't there.
So when I talk to them, what I hear is there was a lot less anxiety. There's obviously like you're human, so you have doubts or whatever, but there was a lot less anxiety. And I think a lot of it is contributed to the fact that there was no other option other than to just wake up and go to work. And then if you go back another generation, and if you keep going back, like think of the person that grew up in the medieval times. They had no false expectations about how easy life was going to be. It was really simple. Like if I don't get food today, then I don't eat. And then over time, it was just like, the default was I go work for what I get. So, okay, anyway, so back to your question about how to balance this.
No, it's part of the answer. So I mean,
So looping that back into the end of the question, I think the first thing to recognize and acknowledge with balance is what it actually looks like, and it's totally okay. Like for me, what it actually looks like is I get up in the morning. So this is what my current schedule looks like. I get up right now. I'm getting up at 5. I got like a half an hour that is just me, like just like chilling and like I'm letting myself not get caught up. This will be an important thing. So, okay, I'm going to call out what it is for me. And again, I don't want to I'm not trying to push any of my beliefs, but for me, I got a half an hour where it's like, I get to sit with God. Yeah. So I just sit, some people would call it meditation or whatever, but
you're on the right show for that, man. I am God. I made the decision. Look, I go into church every single Sunday, and I have been doing it for the past month now. And when it comes to giving all your stuff to God, there's a peace and a calmness that comes over you.
So yes. So I'm not telling anyone that's listening, you can choose to believe what you believe. The point, and that's not like in no way dismissive or whatever. I'm just telling you the label that I put on it. Yeah. And it's got in my first half an hour, and this is critical to the idea of balance. My first half an hour is to slow down my internal engine. Because my internal engine gets sped up. And I I'm a grinder. I go. I'll lose sight of everything that's happening. And you can't have balance that way. So the very first thing for me is I wake up, I'm like, all right, breathe. Yeah. And then I have like an hour where I'm doing some creating, I'm writing emails or I'm creating some content. Then I go work out. Then I come into the office. So I'm in the office by 8, but here's the point. Like I want you to look at that. There's like, when I work out and then I eat. And so like I see my family in there, but if you look at that, there's an hour of my first 2.5 hours at home where I'm doing work. So I don't know, maybe that's balanced, maybe it's not balanced. And then I'm in the office roughly from 8 until, let's call it anywhere from 1 to 3 to 5, depending on the day. And then when I go home, I got some stuff that I'm doing, but then like last night I'm planning out models for our business. Like it just kind of seeps through. So the idea of balance where it's just contained, I don't know that that's practical. And if you try to chase after that and it's like pure form, it's like, that's not really it. So I like to live by a thing I call the 85% rule, which is when I design what I want, if that can happen about 85% of the time, then I'm freaking killing it. Yeah. So what I look at doing, and I've got, like, we could probably put this in the show notes. I've got a video where I talk about the return document, which is the return document for me answers the question, what does balance look like? Yeah. And there's 3 currencies that we have: time, energy, and money. And I list them in that order on purpose. And so the first thing I have to decide when I go to do this is, okay, how much time in this phase of my business, how much time am I willing to give to my business, and how much time is my own? And I'm going to declare it, and I'm going to tell myself why. So that would look like I'll work Monday through Friday. I'll work 5 days a week, and I'll do 8 hours a day, or I'll do 10 hours a day. You can do 3 days a week. It doesn't matter what it is. You just decide what you want it to be. And then you write it down, and you get really clear. And then you tell yourself why. So that when you try to break that and have an affair with your own goals, you remember that, like, no, I made this decision on purpose. Then you do energy, which is what kind of role do you want to have? Then you do money. And I talk about that in the video. So we can send that. It's a longer one to go through, but you define that. That answers the question of what balance is. And you actually run it through a practical lens. that applies to what your life situation is. So for example, when I first went through this exercise, I was like, I was being influenced by everyone that talks about how to design your ideal life. It was like, I'm going to do 2 week-long trips with my family a year. This is like right in the middle of raising my 5 kids. I'm going to do a week-long trip with my wife on the other quarters. We're going to do these other small, like I had all this stuff planned. And I was like, wait a minute. My 2 oldest daughters are in competitive dance. We literally have 1 week out of the entire year that we have nothing going on.
Right.
And so there was no practicality to it. So one of the places where people fall about and thinking about balance is they run to like this irrational thing. So for me, the lens I take is, what would it need to look like so that I could just settle into this for the next 40 years?
Yeah.
Like, how do I design a game that I could theoretically play forever? Now, I'm not committing that I'm going to play that game forever and that I'm never going to make it any better. Eventually, what I want to get to with my businesses, and I've just got some stuff I'm putting into place, but I want to get to where I'm in the office at 8 and I'm done at noon and I've got some time off. And then I'm going to go coach basketball in the afternoon. It'll be from like 2 until 5 or 6 or 7 at night.
Yeah.
So like I see evolutions of how this thing will change over time. But when I start, it's like, but you know what? Like if I hit some struggles or whatever, and if I had to go 8 until 3 for the next 20 years doing the stuff that I love, like great, that works for me.
Yeah.
What doesn't work for me is that I work from 5 until 10 at night.
Right.
Right. Like that doesn't work for me in the long term. So
and
I take the approach of,
though, it's going so much back to the model that you just showed us too. When it starts with you and, you know, making sure everything is being used efficiently. So you may get there 8 to noon, but it's on point. I'm not getting distracted. I'm not going to be scrolling social media. I'm not going to be, this is going to be, unless of course you're posting stuff, but this is going to be work related stuff and we're not going to be distracted. And your work, like one of my, actually a good book to read out is the 4-Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. And he would be talking about these things over and over and over again. Your system, once your systems are in place, these things can happen for you.
Yeah. And it all starts with a vision of, well, what do you want? I say this a lot too. We talked at the beginning that the entire purpose of your business to exist is to get clients, make them happy, make it run like a factory.
Right.
That's actually not entirely true. That's the second responsibility of your business. The first responsibility of your business is to deliver back to you as the owner what you wanted from it in the first place.
Right.
And my contention is that people that don't have balance or don't have that, most of the time it's because they don't actually know what it is. And so what they did when they made all the decisions about their vision, their ops, their team, their client journey, when they made all those decisions, they made them without knowing what they were trying to create. So they just built a business that they woke up one day and they just had. And in most cases, they unfortunately have that business as opposed to being crystal clear about what they want and then building the business that they actually want.
Right.
So it definitely all comes back to that. So my element of how I balance that is, I get really clear on what I want, number one. Number two, I pay attention as I make progress towards it to make sure that it's what I actually want. And I didn't just adopt somebody else's dream. Like I actually see if I care about that or not. And then I shoot for like the 80-85%
franchisees out there that bought into a franchise. That was a big one for you. Just pay. You really a business owner or you just pay to have another job?
Yep. And then the third thing for me is the 80% rule. Is like, all right. And then if I get to like 80% of that, like I win. I get to celebrate that as a win. So like, I don't worry if one night I can't go to one family thing because it happens to be the time that clients are in town or whatever. It's like, that's fine. The other 80% of the time, this worked out perfect. Or that I got to stay up late and I got to finish something because I didn't quite, schedule it the right way, or it's just a project. I got a speaking gig coming up or whatever. Now, if that's happening over and over again, then I need to go back and relook at my model in my vision because I didn't actually create the plan of how the business would give me what I want, or I just acknowledge I'm in a phase where I'm building that this is something that's possible. So that's fine. But either way, like I don't have head trash around it. I'm either working the plan that I put into place, or I'm either working the plan and putting into place, which is why I've got extra time, or this is just one of those anomalies that goes into the 20% that it's not going to work out exactly what I want. And that's totally fine too.
Yeah. Well, speaking of basketball, the great Pat Summitt, I read, she had a book titled Reach for the Summer. She said, plan your work, work your plans. So, Brad, I do want to be very respectful of your time. I definitely appreciate you, not only just speaking, but actually showing us the model of actually how things can get built. You did not have to do that, listeners. You move swiftly, listeners. I'm starting to think you're getting spoiled now with all the great business advice that you've been getting. But could you just talk a little bit about what's next, what your vision actually is for the company, and if there's anyone out there listening that maybe want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you and all
Yeah,
that?
100%. So the vision for Sixth Division, as we move forward, is to help entrepreneurs build smooth scaling businesses. What I've recognized and learned is every business is basically in one of three main phases. The first phase is they've got an idea that they need to prove. They need to prove they have something worth scaling. So this is the phase. Typically, it's from like 0 to maybe 100 grand or whatever. And what we're trying to do is get to the point where it's like, I have a thing that I can sell over and over again. I'm getting leads every single week and I'm closing clients every single month. That's the sign where it's like, okay, I've got this thing, I can run with it. So we'll have some offerings to help people go through that, because we got a whole, as a part of the smooth scaling system, there's a whole model of how to actually vet through that in the simplest way without getting distracted by all the fancy technology and automation. It's like, no, this is the crap that matters to prove it. The next phase is you've got to automate it, which means we got to go install this happy client factory. That is where most of our current offerings are. That's where we help people a lot. We're about to launch, coming up here in the next couple of weeks, a program that anybody who's dealing with any sort of CRM or automation, so Keep, High Level, Active Campaign, any of those, and it's like,
that's
bro,
actually the one I just mentioned before.
Yeah, so it's like, this is like I can see that there's real potential, but this is like all over the place. We're gonna have a program that, in my opinion, if you use any of those, it should be required attendance to go through this program to understand how to think about it and plan it. So that'll be coming out soon.
That's perfect for me. Actually, I might have to.
Yeah.
We got to chop it up about that for sure.
So in a couple of weeks that will launch, and then the third phase is, okay, I've got my happy client factory in place. I've got it built and dialed in, like it's humming. I've got my systems about how I build it in place. And then as you go to scale the business, it's the rest of it. We just jump back to this real quick. It's the rest of like team, ops, vision, like it's refining the process that lives underneath it. Because really, this stuff is important, but it's not critical. Like the phases are find a thing and sell it, build a happy client factory, and then build this underlying foundation. And meanwhile, you're growing the entire time. So I anticipate we'll have some sort of mastermind membership coaching group or whatever for the people that are, they're at that. It probably starts about the $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 as you start to approach 7 figures. It's like, I need some more infrastructure because now my happy client factory is growing. I need a better foundation. So there'll be a piece for there. And then I've got a whole other side of my life that is software. So we got a software company called Plus This, and what we're building are different tools, different tools that make all these things easier. So the future vision is write the manual on how to run a business or how to build a smooth scaling business to make it super simple, and then build the tools that then make that easy. That's the future. And then do it all so I can go coach basketball.
Write the vision and make it plain, man.
Yes.
All right. So Brad, the final thing I do with all the shows, the way I close out, is I want you to use your imagination a little bit. You just had your first son, I believe you said. You just got fired. You don't know what you're going to do. You're not really liking the job offers you're getting. I want you to pretend that version of Brad has come into the Zoom room, give him some words of encouragement, and we will officially close.
Okay. So here's what I would say, and I can remember vividly where I was. I had just dropped this was the day after I got laid off. I had just dropped my 2 oldest kids off at elementary school, and I was pulling out of the parking lot. And normally I would turn left to go to work, and then right was home. And I pulled up, and it's Weinberg Elementary. I can tell you where the address was. I can see it like literally as clear as day. And I pulled up, and it hadn't really hit yet. I pulled up, and I was like, I stopped, and there were, cars. There were some cars going by, but I stopped for a second. I was like, I don't know where to go. And so I kind of ended up just driving around, ended up at a Barnes and Noble, kind of lost. So here's what I would, if I could just be sitting in the car with that person, here's what I would say. I'd say, just chill for a second. You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And the reason why you're going to be fine is because the foundation of whatever you do is you. And you have the capacity locked up inside you to become whatever version you need to become to create whatever outcome you want. Now, my advice to you is don't fight the growth process. Don't give in to fear Fear is just a sign that there's something that you need to learn. And
Right.
you either run away from it or you use it as like, oh, I guess I'll go figure out how to deal with that. So
Mhm.
my biggest piece of advice would be like, just anytime fear comes up, write it up on the wall. And then to the right of it, be like, what's the lesson for me to learn? And then how do I grow past this?
Mhm.
Because the opportunity for what you want is just on the other side of whatever thing you're afraid of. And then business, by the way, so if I'm talking to me in that specific situation, because I had worked at a company with entrepreneurs, but I didn't understand what it meant to be an entrepreneur yet.
Yeah.
So I'd say the first thing I'd talk about is you'll be fine. Follow that model.
Mhm.
The second thing that I would then talk about is business is really simple.
Mhm.
Find a group of people that you like to work with, that you like to serve. Figure out a thing that they need help with. And if I was talking to him, I'd be like, and by the way, you like entrepreneurs and they all suck at automation and you're really good at it. So find a thing that they're not good at that
Yeah.
you're really good at, and
Yeah.
then just go ask them how they want to pay for it and ask them what they want it to be, and
Yeah.
then go deliver that and then never stop making it better.
Never stop making it
Like that's it. Like it's not that hard of an equation.
That's it. And yeah, I'm glad you just mentioned it not being that hard because, when you're going through that, and if you are going, the reason I close out with that question is if you are currently going through that, just simplify it. Love how you said just sit there, really take it all in and listen to what your personal thoughts are. Because if you get too distracted with what the world wants of you, you will start to feel overwhelmed. Even in that moment, even in that car, you could start feeling overwhelmed and start making decisions that will make things worse. And I'll close it out with the sports analogy. You never want one loss to become two losses. You never want that to happen.
My coach always told me, don't make the second mistake. Don't make the second mistake. I'm gonna clean up my language just a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not that complicated.
Mm-hmm.
It is hard, but don't conflate the two. If
Yeah.
you're afraid of hard, it's because you grew up in our current generation. You think everything should be easy. No, hard is not a problem.
Right.
Complicated will actually deter you. So it's not that complicated.
Right.
Go to the basics. Anytime it starts to feel overwhelming, go back to the basics and then just do the hard work that you're avoiding by trying to like find some other way. So it's not complicated, but it is hard, but hard's not a problem.
Right.
That's easy. You can handle that stuff.
Exactly. It won't, well, if you are truly doing what you love, then it won't feel like it. So, I mean, obviously there are things that are gonna be hard about it, but if you're really doing what you love, you're gonna have the fortitude to keep going. So
100%.
Appreciate you coming on. I personally am excited because I connected with you and then looking forward to seeing what you got going on, man, in the future. So all
Awesome.
that
Thanks for
being
having me.
said, fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.